All right, here we go. Try to get you out in 20, okay? All right, I'm just gonna go over how you figure each one of these out. All right, they have to give you total product. Marginal product is the change in total product over the change in input. So I could just go 17 minus 7 gives me 10, 24 minus 17 gives me 7. So that's how you figure out the marginal product.
Can you repeat that?
Yes.
Formula.
Yeah, it's the change in total product over the change in input. But the input is always 1 here, Sam.
Okay.
So it's a, now, will there be a question on marginal product on the midterm? I almost could guarantee it. Like them giving you some sort of chart, you have to figure marginal product. The second thing they could say is, when does marginal product start to decrease? All right, so it goes from 7, increases to 10. So it decreases when you get the third worker or after the second worker, depending on how they phrase it.
And then would it say after 2?
Yeah, I would say either after 2 or at third, okay? All right, now, marginal product, where it says additional revenue, I would just change that to MRP and change that to MRC. Because that's more the terminology we use.
MRP?
For additional revenue per worker, and MRC for the cost for each worker. All right, in perfect competition, MP times price gives you MRP. So 7 times 10 gives you 70, 10 times 10 gives you 100. So you could write MP, just put an X here, times price equals MRP. And then, in perfect competition, MRC equals wage. So it's just 20 straight down. Okay? Now, a question they like to ask is, how many workers would you hire? It's MRC equals MRP. So I go down, 20 equals 20. There I am, 5 workers.
Is this always going to be like the case no matter like perfect competition or like?
Oh, no matter what, MRC has to equal MRP. And if, Rebel, if they can't be perfectly equal, it's the closest with MRP being greatest. Okay? Okay. All right, here is the 3 shifters in the resource or factor market of demand. 1, change in product demand, really meaning change in price, okay? Because if demand increases, the price of the product increases. If demand decreases, the price of the product decreases. I just realized I have no prep for tomorrow, right?
Absolute advantage.
I'm not teaching anything. What?
Who wants?
It's like a day off. All right, change in productivity. All right, now, usually it's technology. Here's where it's a little confusing, because in the product market, technology shifts supply, rat nest technology. In the factor market, it shifts demand, okay? And think of augmenting technology. By augmenting, technology that makes you more productive. And then the third, substitutes. So what happens to demand if assembly line workers, if we have robots? So if price of robots fall, we're going to pick robots, not assembly line workers. Okay. Now, MRP, marginal revenue product. Remember, in economics, marginal meaning additional. So additional revenue for the additional worker. Additional revenue generated by an additional worker. Okay. Don't even write all this stuff. Just write, in perfect competition, NP times P equals MRP. Okay? So in perfect competition, MRP equals NP times P.
I'm going to lose my mind.
Now, in something like a monopsony, all right, so change in total revenue over change in inputs. So say it's a monopoly, it's not like perfect competition, then it would be change in total revenue over change in inputs. This formula you could use for perfect competition and for not perfect competition. So marginal revenue product is change in total revenue over change in inputs. If, for example, you're forgetting what total revenue is, you could put in parentheses, price times quantity, just as a quick reminder. Okay, we're all good? All right, marginal resource or factor. Factor and resource is the same. Usually with labor, they call it resource. For like robots, they call it factor, but they mean the same. Marginal, additional cost for additional worker. In perfect competition, it's the wage. So in perfect competition, there's no calculation. The wage is 20, that's the marginal resource cost. Okay? And then, in non-perfect competition, again, change in total cost over change in inputs. Change in total cost over change in inputs. Okay? Okay. I'm going to give you like a minute, draw the side-by-side graph in the labor market. Perfect competition, side-by-side in the labor market. Okay, so, and I continue to want to emphasize, say you get on the test and you forget it, at least give this. Draw the industry, because they're going to give you a point just for putting wage, market, like, you know, supply, and whatever they tell you to do, their wage and quantity. All right, does anyone remember what goes across, what's perfectly elastic? It's wage and supply. Okay, so there it is. It's the wage there, supply equals MRC, and then downward sloping, don't make ridiculous puns. And your profit maximizer, MRC equals MRP, there you are. Now, how about what happens if 1 million workers immigrate to the United States? What's going to happen to this graph? I see the wheels turning, Cole. You're thinking.
With supply shift right?
Sam says yes, I'm going with it then. All right, supply shifts right. Okay, and there we are. Okay. There's no like short run or long run in the labor market. You just shift it right.
That sounded unpleasant. It was.
Okay? Just remember that supply is like number of workers. So you shift it out that way. Okay? All right. All right, I'm going to give you the monopsony graph to work on and graph, and then I'll go over it with you in about a minute. I'll let you just write it down. I try to remember this as Mark S. Don't make ridiculous puns. This should be demand here. Don't make ridiculous puns. All right, again, I go to MRC equals MRP, my profit maximizer. But a monopsony is like a monopoly in the labor market. So I drop it down to supply, and there's my wage. Straight on down, there's my quantity. Second question, they'll ask that. The second question they can ask is, what happens if this monopsony operates at perfect competition? Well, I take supply and demand, like the industry, WC, QC, perfect competition. Now, Bobby, they might ask, if a monopsony turns into a perfectly competitive market, will wages increase, decrease, or stay the same? They're going to increase, right?
Yeah,
How about workers? Will they hire more or less?
if it goes to perfect competition.
Yeah.
More.
Okay, so those are some of the questions they could ask.
Can you explain that again?
Yeah. What? Perfect competition, supply, demand, right? So if they, is that what you needed to hear again?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the third thing is, they could say minimum wage, let's just put minimum wage here, all right? If they give you a minimum wage, all you have to do is now draw a line going across, and this line actually becomes an MRC, okay? It hits the supply, whichever it hits first, supply or demand, that's how many workers you're gonna have. You go on down, and the one thing you could say, in a monopsony, minimum wage increases the amount of workers. In perfect competition, it would decrease it, but here, it increases the amount of workers. Okay? All right. So we got monopsony down. Any questions on that? Usually, there's only been one free response in the last 10 years on a monopsony. Usually one or two multiple choice questions. Okay? All right. Here we go. We left resource market. We're now into public goods. Here's what I need you to know. 2 criteria to make something a public good. 1, non-exclusion. Non-exclusion means you don't have to pay for it. All right? So like public school, parks, roads, that's non-exclusion. I put national defense, because if you pay your taxes or you don't, the Army still protects you. You also have to have shared consumption, non-rival, meaning your use of it doesn't affect my use of it. Your use of national defense doesn't hurt me. Your use of the roads doesn't hurt me. Okay? That makes a public good. Go to check.
For non-exclusion, is it only for paying, or is it just like there's no cost?
I mean, paying eliminates you, right? Because that excludes. But to be a public good, they can't. So, if I have a club that says only men, that can't be a public good because it's excluding women. But money usually is the excluder, okay? Now, most of the goods are private goods. Private goods are excludable and are non-rival. I mean non-rival. Meaning, if I buy a hamburger, Sam might not be able to afford it, but if Sam takes a bite out of the hamburger, it's not as good to me. All right? That's Sam. Always biting into my hamburger. Okay. All right, we got 2 externalities. You don't need. All right, here's what you need to know about an externality. It affects a third party, either negatively or positively, who did not participate in the transaction. So, I'm going to give you a negative first. That just shut itself off.
What's happened at the other review that I was at my bad karma?
Is it you, Cole? I was also there though.
Oh, yeah, you were. Oh, got that on there.
Does anyone have, that's this. Does anyone have a good marker?
I didn't.
My marker's got one of those fine points.
Okay, I'll draw this while that's on. All right, so like I said, it's a third-party effect. So this would be marginal private cost, and this is marginal social benefits, which is demand. This is supply. So what this is saying, say, is the cost of cigarettes to a person is $4, and that's the quantity those people are gonna buy. However, we know that smoking causes secondhand smoke and other problems, so the marginal social cost is greater. So I'm just gonna make that $7, okay? And that's the optimal quantity over here. All right? Now, on both externalities, if I take the market, that line, and go straight up, that gives me my deadweight loss box, and this would also be my external cost. So here, what I'm saying is, there's $3 extra cost besides